All right. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are. I'm Alex Morgan. I am the CEO of Climate Sense, a small social enterprise working on regenerative ag and soil carbon, soil health improvements. And I also am the board chair of Equal Origins, the organization that's hosting our webinar today. I am very fortunate to be joined by four panelists who will introduce in just a few moments, who are going to share their expertise and breadth of knowledge and ideas and strategies for the future of how we really drive long-lasting impact for women in farming communities. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. Just so everybody knows, in case anyone is looking for their native language, you can switch over to a subtitled version. So I'll just pause here for a moment so folks can look at the directions here. But basically, down below, you can click the live transcript subtitling and move into your native language of choice. Just want to see how this is working. So we've got four panelists, as well as Kimberly, who's our executive director for Equal Origins, joining us, and a few other folks who are just going to say a brief word at the end. Hopefully today we'll have as much of a conversation as possible. The goal isn't to just bombard you with slides and boring one-liners from each of us, and we'll try to keep it as lively as possible. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. I'm going to try to look through those questions as we go, as I get the opportunity, and pull some of them out toward the end. I can't guarantee that we'll get to all of them, depending upon how many there are, but we'll try to leave a little bit of space. So Kimberly, if you can go to the next slide, please. Actually, let's just go to the next one, please. So basically, the goal here today is to put the International Year of the Woman Farmer into context. We have one of our panelists is going to talk to you more about what that means, what it looks like in action. But then we want to hear from a number of partners across the supply chain and look at how any entity, any individual, whether they're at a coffee roaster, they're at a chocolate branch, they're at retail, or they're implementing programs in the field, or an intermediary trader in between, or an implementing partner on the ground. Any entity within the supply chain, and we're talking about coffee and cocoa here today, but really any entity across any agricultural supply chain has a role to play in moving this agenda forward and creating the type of lasting impact that we're seeking. So hopefully we'll give you a little bit of glimpse across that supply chain and look at the various methods and approaches that are being taken. So as I mentioned at the outset, we have four speakers joining us today, and we're going to give each of them a chance to tell us all a little bit about themselves and talk about their work as it relates to gender equity and the engagement of women farmers in their supply chains. And so they're all going to introduce themselves as I turn it over to them. But for right now, we've got Mariola Acosta from FAO, from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. We've got Meseret Alfaro from CARE Ethiopia, Ariana Carter from Ecom, and Amy Guittard from Guittard Chocolate. And as I mentioned, Kimberly Eason will join us from Equal Origins, who's our executive director, in a moment. So those of you not familiar with Equal Origins, we're an organization that is committed to engaging and driving change and impact with women in agricultural communities. The belief is backed up by years of evidence, and we'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment, but years of evidence showing that regardless of the type of activity you've got, whether it's working on poverty eradication or child labor or climate resilience agriculture, the more engaged the women in those farming communities are, the more successful long-term that those programs will be in the impacts that they achieve on those other areas. And so we've been working for just over a decade, and we've got tools and online tools. We've got the Gender Equity Index. We've got a number of resources that are available to companies across the supply chain, producer groups, and others to try to engage more holistically and robustly the women in those farming communities. And so today we're not here to just do a self-promotion grandstand, but we're here to talk about the International Year of the Women Farmer. And so I'm going to just not say much about it because we've got an expert in the area in just a moment. But 2026 has been recognized as the year for the women farmer. And, I think one of the things, hopefully one of the themes that you can pull out from today's discussion is that, it's not just about awareness, it's about meaningful and long-term impact and change on the ground. And so, I think we've made great strides in terms of general awareness building of the role and importance of women in farming communities, but we have not done a good enough job, particularly at that integration thread that I mentioned earlier of how, when we're trying to drive change on any number of those other issues, we are focusing and building in a formal approach to actually engage the women in those communities, regardless of the power dynamics in that particular region of the world. And so, with that being said, I'm going to, just switching my screen here for one moment. What we have seen at Equal Origins is that time and again, projects that are being funded and implemented without full engagement from women in the community. And when that does happen, there are obviously success stories, but you see, impact that occurs. It could be climate resilience practices that are adopted and implemented for year one and year two, and you get good outcomes. But then in subsequent years, the results really diminish. And so the key that was probably not integrated into that project was the engagement of the women farmers in those communities, as well as the women at large in those communities. And so when we talk about, gender equity as a concept, it's not something that is, a separate track. It's not a component of social deliverables that needs to be delivered as part of the SDG, but rather it's a central and core component to any and all initiatives. And so hopefully by the end of this discussion, we'll be able to really pull that out and see what approaches are really successful, what can be maybe tested in further advance, but then also how we can be working together cross supply chain, but also cross-sectorally to drive the results that we need. So I am going to begin to turn it over to our panelists. We're going to take just a couple moments to allow them to introduce themselves. And then I'm going to prompt each one of them with a little bit of a prompt as to what we hope we'll hear from them in their intros. And so we're going to kick off with Mariola Acosta from FAO. And Mariola, if you would just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Year of the Woman Farmer and what that looks like, and keep in mind how we move from awareness to results and impact.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Mariola Acosta. I'm the Strategic Coordinator for the International Year of the Woman Farmer 2026, and I work at the Rural Transformation and Gender Equality Division within FAO. And today, really, we are gathering to recognize women in the cocoa and coffee sectors, and more broadly, to celebrate the International Year of the Woman Farmer. And this is, to me, really a year that should serve for us as a reflection, a commitment, and action year. The year is a powerful acknowledgement of the millions of women across the world who are sustaining our agri-food systems, who are nourishing our communities, and who really are supporting rural economies. And often we see that they do so without the recognition, the resources, or the rights that they deserve. So the International Year 2026 of the Woman Farmer was declared in recognition of a clear and persistent reality. Women are central to global agri-food systems, yet they continue to face structural barriers that limit their full participation and their potential. And in the coffee and cocoa sector and across the different producing regions, we see that women farmers play essential roles across the value chains. And this really goes from cultivating and maintaining the coffee and cocoa trees, harvesting and sorting the beans, performing critical post-harvest processes such as fermentation, drying, and quality selection. And many of these women are smallholder farmers that are working on family plots or that are working as seasonal laborers, as processors, as traders, and as rural entrepreneurs. And beyond their working in production, we also recognize that they are leaders in the coffee and cocoa growing communities. They lead producer groups, cooperatives, participate in local institutions, and really advocate for more inclusive, sustainable value chains. And through their knowledge and their leadership, women are contributing to improving the quality of coffee and cocoa, to strengthening household incomes, to supporting climate resilient farming practices, and really, as a whole, sustaining the livelihoods of rural communities that are depending on coffee and cocoa. Yet, as I said before, across sectors beyond the cocoa and coffee, and also across region, women are consistently less likely to own land, to access formal credit, to receive extension services, to adopt new technologies, or to hold leadership positions in organizations. They also face poorer working conditions than men. They also work more and for longer hours. In addition to all of this, women farmers are carrying very heavy burdens of unpaid care and domestic work, which is really limiting their time for education, their time for training, their time for leisure, and their time for other income generative activities. And these gender inequalities are really, really costly. Recent evidence from the status of women in agri-food systems, which was a report that FAO publishes in 2023, really shows that investing in women farmers is about one of the smartest investments anyone can make. So we know evidence tells us once every time that women's empowerment reduces hunger, increases dietary diversity, and strengthens resilience. And just to put this into a more concrete context, we see that empowering rural women could raise the income of 58 million more people and build the resilience for 235 million. At the same time, if we were able to close productivity and wage gaps between men and women, we could also raise the global GDP by $1 trillion and leave 45 million people out of hunger. And this is really transformative potential. And the international year and the international community is really ready to tap into this transformative potential. As I said at the beginning, it provides us a very timely platform to not only raise awareness, but really to also direct policies, investments, and actions where are most needed for women farmers. So this means, for example, ensuring that women have access and control over land, finance, markets, training, technologies, but also addressing discriminatory social norms and reducing the heavy burdens of unpaid care work. But this is no easy task, and no single actor can do this alone. So we really are relying on governments, the private sector, the civil society, and development partners to really work together to create the right conditions for women to empower themselves, to make their own choices, and to really to thrive. So just finally, just to say that having empowered women in agri-food systems is really a collective responsibility, and is really one of the surest pathways to sustainable, inclusive development. So I use this opportunity to invite all of you and all of our listeners to play a proactive role in the different organizations where you're working on, and your communities, to really use this year and celebrate women farmers across the world. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mariola. We're going to come back to you on what that success looks like for 2026. But you mentioned civil society, and so we have the pleasure of being joined by Meseret, who's from CARE Ethiopia. And Meseret, if you could talk a little bit, first introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what implementation looks like on the ground, what types of programs you're seeing, what innovations you're seeing out there.
Now, thank you very much for having me today to join this panel. My name is Masarat Allaro. I'm the Senior Gender and Policy Advisor for the Women Empowerment through Gender Transformative Markets Opportunities Program, financed by the Gates Foundation. So I'm very happy to join this panel today because also the year is called International Year of Women Farmer. And I think this is like my first time to hear women celebrated globally as, farmers, contributors, and their roles counted. So being from the rural background and also having experienced, observed, and lived the life of women as a rural farmer. So I particularly delight, this year is declared as the year of International Year of Women Farmer. And also I'm taken as one of the panelists in it. So, there are several good practices and efforts on the ground. Even the project that I'm working currently in is targeting women farmers as the primary in the work that we are doing. One of the activities that we are doing is to provide integrated approach that covers comprehensive issues. For example, the good agricultural practices that sustains climate smart approach and the use of improved variety, also adopting climate smart practices and nature-based solutions, and including market piece into the work that we are doing, and also reflecting on the different traditional gender norms that inhibit the participation and women's control over resources, decision making, as well as their freedom for mobility to access several different resources, including institutions, financial institutions, input suppliers, and access to market. We are operating in a situation where we are promoting market-based approach. We also promote locally led innovations, and where the innovators are also farmers, female farmers. As innovators, we provided them, the opportunity to try out the long tested practices in their interaction with nature and humanity. We are also creating space for building women's self-concept, self-awareness, their capacity, building their confidence, awareness raising, and also providing them skills on using finance and accessing financial institutions. But I think I just want to mention about some of the constraints. Mariela has mentioned several of them in the beginning. I agree with all of the points that she has mentioned. Just to add on it, women are operating in situations where they are time poor. Like this time, their time poverty emanates from the fact that they engage, for example, in the agricultural labor force contribution for the household, as well as commercially owned coffee processing activities. So they contribute about 70% in the small scale coffee production, as well as those commercialized productions. But they have several responsibilities. So operating in the income generating activities in the productive segment, as well as they have to also take responsibilities of domestic, taking care of the family, ensuring food is available on the table, taking care of elderly children and sick people is their responsibility. And it's not only that, but they also have the responsibility of doing community responsibilities. There are rituals, celebrations, weddings, and also different kinds of mornings. So they have to provide to such kind of community responsibilities in terms of their labor. And also when we look into the rural infrastructure in the context of Ethiopia, rural infrastructures, which are very important for the production and also processing of coffee and other domestic responsibilities, are highly manual, taking their labor. So they have to walk from where they live to the farthest place to fetch water, also to collect fire, and because they depend on biomass for energy source. And also they fetch water from the farthest place, especially in this climate-stricken environment. Currently, water points get dried early after the rainy season, so they have to walk to far places where they can also be exposed to several kinds of gender-based violence, early marriage, and many to name. So the other one is also they do their job. The 70% of the jobs that they do in the production component takes really, is done manually, like picking the cherries, planting, and several of the activities, sorting, grading, is done, manually. So it's time consuming. So when they are contributing about 70% of the job, they get smaller amount of trainings to adapt good agricultural practices. Even if they attend trainings, they may not have the time to follow up and to adapt the best practices. That's really an important thing that I just want to highlight as a factor that we have to take into consideration. The other one is the traditional customary and gender norms that assign women, smaller places, they looking down and disregarding their role and contribution. For example, even if they do a lot of the work in the production, in the processing and sorting of, coffee value chain, for example, they do not have control over income. So they cannot make income decisions so that they may even buy time-saving appliances to use in their household, or also to ease their work as a farm labor. So I think I can talk a lot of things, but just for the economy of time, I want to wind up here, and we'll come back
Great.
if time
Thank you very
allows.
much. Yeah, no, thanks very much. Very, very well put. And, I think we've framed things from what's going on in the global context down to what's going on the ground realities. And so that time scarcity point, time poverty point that you made, I think is a really critical one. And Kimberly has rightly pointed out numerous times to us in Equal Origins of how many projects fail because of that challenge alone. So as we think about ways to adapt and adopt new approaches, keeping that in mind as projects are developed, as concepts are scoped, et cetera, I think is really critical. So from the ground reality to the supply chain reality, I'm going to turn it over to Ariana Carter from Ecom to tell us a little bit about your work in potentially both. I know you're in cocoa, but obviously Ecom is working in both coffee and cocoa. But what it looks like on the ground and what some of the challenges are that you face in trying to engage women in farming communities.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Ariana Carter. I work for Ecom. And for those of you who don't know, Ecom is a soft commodity trader. We trade primarily cocoa, coffee, and cotton, but we also work in some other edible nuts and seeds. We are an origin integrated company. So what that means is we have large teams within producing countries that work directly with farmers, both in a buying capacity, but also kind of as the extension agent of corporate voluntary sustainability programs. So we offer a lot of services to farmers and engage with them regularly through these teams. My role at Ecom is the implementer of our sustainability strategy. So it's known internally as Smarter Cocoa. And within Smarter Cocoa, we set a series of commitments around how we want to do business, both within our origin operations, but also globally. And for us, it started because Ecom had set targets under Smarter Cocoa to reach all of our origin teams with the GEI. So the GEI is the Gender Equity Index. It was a tool developed by Equal Origins, which essentially helps us identify the opportunities for ourselves to enhance gender equitable service provision with farmers. So the goal was to have that done by the end of 2025, which we have completed or are finalizing a few of our roadmaps across 10 of our country teams. 7 of these countries have staff that work directly with cocoa farmers, so actually have like an implementation arm that does sustainability initiatives. The others are just procurement arms, and they are associated to our larger coffee divisions within those countries. So, but I will speak mostly to the cocoa side. Alex, I know you pointed on me to talk about coffee, but I am a cocoa person through and through. But essentially, in practice, what this means is the team fills out the GEI, which is a questionnaire, and then works with the Equal Origin team through a series of workshops to map out the risks and opportunities for improvement. And that ultimately lays the groundwork for a gender equity development plan. And that's a tailored kind of origin-specific roadmap. And it kind of looks internally and externally. So part of it is inwards facing, and we're looking at how our business runs and our HR policies, whether or not we have like a team, for example, that's responsible for gender delivery within our programs. And then it's also external facing. So it's how we engage with farming communities, how we deliver trainings, how we collect data, how we map stakeholders. So it gives us both of those contexts to act on. And I can go in specific examples if you want, or we can come back to it. I'm not sure we're doing the time.
Yeah, we'll come back to you on that for specific examples, but maybe we can find an example where you both had, high success, but also a key learning that you could share with the audience.
Okay.
Amy, we're going to turn to you now. Amy Guittard is from Guittard Chocolate. So if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what this looks like for a brand that interacts with consumers and why it matters in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Guittard. I'm with Guittard Chocolate. I think I'm the 5th generation. For those of you who don't know much about Guittard, we're a 157-year-old family business. I guess we're at the number 7 in the 150s now. As I said, I'm the 5th generation. I'm also the first woman in my family to be part of the business, which I think this topic is applicable to us, not only because we're women, but also because it's my family business. And there's a lot of sentimentality there as well. And so we are an interesting company in that we create products for consumers. We also create products for chefs, and we also create products for the B2B side of the chocolate industry. So I describe us as sort of the smallest of the big guys and the biggest of the small guys. Our philosophy is very much driven around craft and having really strong relationships throughout our supply chain, which I think informs a lot of what I can speak to today about the work that we do at Origin, which is really centered around collaboration. Because we're a small company, we don't have boots on the ground necessarily. We go to Origin as much as we can. Being based on the West Coast of the US, getting to West Africa takes a really long time, but we get there. We also go to South America really frequently. And as I handle marketing at Guittard, and I work really closely with John Kehoe, who's our director of sustainability. And between the two of us and a wider group at Guittard, we've developed and designed program working at Origin with folks like Ecom and Equal Origins that really leverages the expertise, and CARE for that matter, really leverages the expertise of those who are integrated on the ground that allows for us to create that collaborative approach. And I think the GEI is actually one of those examples of integrating gender throughout all the program work that's being done. We've done a couple studies communities historically. I think in 2019 was the date, the year that we did it. Everything around COVID turns into a blur for me. So I think it was 2019. We did a gender equity sort of study around secondary income streams with the Sustainable Food Lab, which is a great organization out of Vermont. And that was focused on trying to partner with VSLAs and women's groups within Ghana to try to look at how women can help supplement during the off season. So cocoa has a primary season and then like a secondary season. So there's this sort of downslope in income that communities and co-ops and families can get. Ariana, you can speak to this better than I probably. And so there's sort of this gap in income. And so the study was looking at how the role that women can play to help bring in some secondary income streams. And as Mariola and Meseret both mentioned, sort of that time poor situation that you get into where women are being asked to help supplement during the off seasons of cocoa on top of all the other sort of responsibilities that they have. And so I think it was a really good sort of exercise in looking at what it takes to create an integrated approach to creating sort of a holistic overview of what communities and co-ops can do to try to bring in income sort of consistently throughout the year. So some learnings there. We've done some great projects with Ecom and Equal Origins. Again, we did a program, I think it was in 2021, in Oro Verde, which is a co-op in Esmeraldas, Ecuador. And, you know, we did that looking at the DEI or GEI, sorry. It's very early. I had a very long day yesterday, traveled down, as Alex knows, down to Southern California for a trade show. It was a very long day. I've had about 4 cups of coffee this morning, so I'm on the struggle bus. But anyway, so we did a project in Oro Verde and working with Equal Origins to pilot the Gender Equity Index. And we had some learnings there, which I can speak to. But overall, I think one of the things that we do is, as a brand, it's our sort of responsibility to help communicate all the great work that's being done on the ground by folks like CARE and Equal Origins, and then also by Ecom to try to communicate that with our customers and our consumers. And, you know, I think sustainability is such an important topic for consumers, and yet there's a little bit of a knowledge barrier. I think there's an opportunity, and we can speak to this as well, to try to educate on the complexity and how, you know, brands can check off certain boxes, but sometimes it's the longer term work that actually makes the biggest impact. And some of that might be in conflict with what a consumer thinks is important. And so I think there's an element of education and knowledge base that brands have to take responsibility for in order to be effective in taking the great work that happens at Origin and making sure that it reaches a consumer. So anyway.
Terrific. Thank you all very, very much. I'm going to actually kick off the discussion with a question to all of you, put you all a little bit on the spot. So as you think, I'm going to start with you, Mariola. So you're first up, given your role. But as you think about the International Year of the Woman Farmer, and you think about this theme of moving from awareness to impact and long-term change on the ground, what does success look like for you? What would a successful 2026 Year of the Woman Farmer look like for you, and then for our other panelists as well?
Thank you. To me, I think one of the most important impacts that the International Year of the Woman Farmer is aiming to have, it's really to put at the center of global discourse the important roles of women farmers that play across agri-food systems, but also to put in relevance the challenges that they face. So this public awareness raising, it is central, as with any international year. Apart from this, of course, important aspect of increased attention, what we also aim to have is really renewed political will and increased investments towards gender equality and women's empowerment in agri-food systems. And then, as I was saying before, I hope that by the end of this year, the general public, and when I speak with many different actors, but we are all within the same sector, right? But to me, when I speak with my friends, they might not know exactly what women farmers do, right? So to me, that's also a very important goal of this year. So by the end of the year, I hope that the general public, my friends and your friends, get to know more about the roles that women farmers are playing and the challenges that they are facing, and that they also think when they are buying their chocolate, when they are buying their coffee, who is behind all of that work.
Terrific. How about any of the others have a thought on what success looks like for the year?
I can jump in. I think just building on that and building on what I mentioned earlier, I just think having the consumers fully understand that. Mariola, you just mentioned that, but you can think about it in terms of the raw materials, but you can also think about it in terms of sort of complex products. So, we sell chocolate as an ingredient, but we also sell it as an ingredient for others to make other things. And so I think it's really easy. Let me rephrase that. It's easier for someone to eat a chocolate bar and think, oh, like what's the impact this has, and what are sort of all the social dynamics that went into creating this product. But there's so many other products that have lots of different ingredients, right? It could be a coffee flavored chocolate bar with cashews, and like all of those other ingredients are dealing with very similar things. And so really for consumers to be able to deconstruct the products that they're consuming in their day-to-day and understand the social dynamics that are at play, I guess, when creating that end product, and also realizing that gender equity is not one lever, that it needs to be part of an integrated approach to all of the sustainable programs that are behind all the ingredients that are in each of the products that we consume. So that would be my goal, is for consumers to really grasp that gender equity needs to be integrated, and that being able to deconstruct all the products that we consume, and understanding that there's deeper work that needs to be done across all of these sort of ingredients, you could say, soft goods.
I could jump in as well.
And
we can just add, build off what Amy is saying, but kind of one step behind, which is, e-com and every other organization is made up of individuals, right? And we're operating within broader cultural norms, which inevitably influence how we run our business. And the reality is that these gender norms that we all live under can lead to systemic biases. And this is true within Origin, but it is also true in the West. It's true in London, where I am, and it exists within all of our teams. And this is part of why we really like the GEI, is it's very inward facing, and creates a lot of space to think about the awareness within our own teams about these issues, and our management teams, and how we deliver trainings and support women within the organization to grow within the organization, who we're hiring as field technicians that are ultimately the kind of the face of e-com to the farmer. And there's a lot of work with these kind of implementation arms, which kind of leads back to, also the people just sitting behind desks, on gender awareness and gender sensitivity and gender analysis, so that we can be the best versions of ourselves when delivering sustainability programs. So I'd love to see by the end of this year is a bit more kind of awareness building internally on that. I think maybe historically women's empowerment projects are really focused on farmers, and reaching specifically women farmers, which is incredibly important. But there is also, I think, a step behind that that needs to take place. So yeah, that's maybe what I'd say.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Well, I just want to highlight the key policy priority issues that Equal Origins, together with GIZ and in partnership with the Ethiopian Coffee and Spice Authority and myself also from the WIPO project, we have really identified an exhaustive list of interventions which are like developed in conversation with relevant stakeholders. So if we can prioritize those policy quick wins that we can implement in the shortest time. So we have resources already at hand that is indicating what to do, like building on what is done. So we can just prioritize some of the issues. They were about 13 of them identified. So from that, I would suggest challenging gender norms and engaging male, so creating more male champions, because a lot of the things that we have talked about, for example, recognizing and redistributing, also reducing the burdens on women, that is aggravating the time poverty, decreasing their attendance and adoption of best practices. Well, we want, quality coffee, drought-resistant varieties. We also want to increase productivity. So there is an economic side for a woman's poverty. It's not only exhausting the woman, but also it affects the value chain from its very beginning to the marketing end and also to the export end. So it's about bringing quality. So working on the woman's time poverty needs engaging male, challenging traditional gender norms that have been under play. So also I would suggest, to see improved access to women-friendly technologies to lessen their burden at household chores, also at the farm level work in the value chain. So most of the things that they do are labor intensive. So that is needing their engagement. It needs meticulous preparations and pickings, and even if some of them are seasonal, but it's really overloading carrying the cherries from the farm to some collection centers and processing them. Everything is manual, and then women are less paid for it even. So I would really like to suggest to think of women-friendly technologies that are also affordable, because if it's very expensive, it may not be practically possible, and locally generated. So if we can really be able to advocate that, and at institutional labor institutionally, and also program level gender integration, I would also recommend that. And thank you very much.
Yeah, we've got a question here from Kathy, which actually lines up well with the direction that we'd like to go. So we've, acknowledging, recognizing a lot of the challenges that women are facing in agricultural supply chains and communities, and then some of what is being done to address it. But as we think about what success looks like, do we have examples of projects? Meseret, maybe it's the project you're working with currently, Ariana, some of your projects in the field, but anyone feel free to jump in. But what are some examples of work where you've seen, an assessment is done in a community, you acknowledge the challenges from a gender perspective, and then where you have actually achieved transformative impact? What has taken you from point A to point B? And then what are the metrics that we're looking at for success? And maybe Kimberly, if you want to, you don't need to jump in at the start, but if you want to jump in on this question as well. Anyone can jump in.
I can open Meseret's hands up. Yeah, Meseret, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. So the programs that we are implementing currently, the Women Empowerment Through Gender Transformative Market Opportunities Program, is using couple-based approach, where both the husband and the wife together come and attend the integrated farmer field and business school model that the Care Ethiopia program is implementing. So what is changed? We women, men and women together come and attend. So men have started to share domestic responsibilities. Women are also getting more free time to engage in, like improved sustainable agricultural practices. They can tell clearly the varieties, names of varieties that they are planting. They are also telling seasons. They have their technical skills in the agricultural operation has increased. Not only that, but their access to income has increased. So they do a joint household decision making. So they have started to open bank accounts together, a husband and a wife. So they also negotiate in taking products to market, when to take products to market and to what price to sell it, and how to spend the money. And not only that, but their financial literacy is increased. We have the goodwill of household husbands and also the community leaders. So there is a specialized community dialogue called social analysis and action. This is a CARES approach. So the community leaders, higher structures are also engaged to reflect in restrictive gender norms. So now we have got the will of the community leaders. So they are allowing women to make decision on land. So land transfer and land inheritance is also for women. So women are also given the permission to also get into groups, to get into businesses, together leasing land from the environment, from the surrounding. So, like also their mobility has increased. They have started to demonstrate or to buy and sell agricultural inputs. They sell their products and commodities out of their local market, in the international trade fair, in the regional trade fairs. So I think there is a lot to talk about it. And we also work at a system level with the Ministry of Agriculture and with the Ethiopian Coffee and Spice Authority. So at the system level, gender equality strategy is instituted. So systems programs have started to integrate gender in their annual plans, in midterm and long-term plan. So several sectors in the agriculture have started to invite the Women in Social Affairs Executive to look into their resources, their manuals, their strategies, and their plans. So how gender-centered their work is. So these are really very much great positive things and achievements that we can talk about. At an institution level, we have also empowered technical capacity of staff to integrate gender, how to do gender responsive monitoring, how to do gender responsive budgeting. So these all are positive things to talk about, both at a community level and at institutional level. Thank you very
And
much.
Ariana, you were going to jump in at the project level. As you look at what are the the KPIs, the measures of transformative impact.
Yeah, so I mean, and Meseret kind of touched on this, and some of these things can just be little nudges. Like it doesn't need to be a whole new strategy, like trying to tackle carbon emissions within your supply chain. So it could be just about building that capacity internally and training your teams, understanding the level of knowledge internally, creating some governance, like a local gender committee that's responsible for monitoring impact. Or it could be, just making sure that when you're collecting data, you're collecting it in a gender disaggregated way. But maybe to give kind of some more challenging examples. So the way we run our programs, we often our systems register a single lead farmer, and that single lead farmer is associated to the farm that's within the supply chain that exists within the program. And that in practice, this role it's frequently assigned to the male head of the household. So this is, either due to formal land ownership or because of prevailing social norms that kind of position men as the default representative of the farm. And ultimately, this shapes who interacts with the services that are being provided for the program, and whose perspectives are reflected when you're looking for feedback on how the program is going and things like that. And this is also linked to more and more we're seeing like digital payments are pushed. So programs want to see instead of a cash payment, a digital payment. But then this becomes exclusionary if you have a woman who's your lead farmer, because women struggle to access finance in parts because they don't have land ownership rights. So Ghana, one of our origin teams, and actually the first team that did the GEI back in 2022, our gender specialists there, Deborah and Tui, started running advocacy efforts to help women gain access to land. So it's including engaging with stakeholders from the Land Commission, traditional leaders, women in agriculture, and Department of Gender. And the idea here is to kind of shift this root cause issue that ultimately results in kind of other issues farther down the line. So I can end there.
Thanks, Ariana.
Great.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, and if I can add, the key behind the Gender Equity Index really aligns with both what Ariana and Meseret were saying, is that there are important shifts that need to happen by each team member, each person on a team that's responsible for delivering services or responsible for human resources or for program design or project development, project implementation. There are many, many different roles, and in every role, as Ariana is pointing to, there are important levers. And the way that the GEI works is to help the teams shine the light on where they can make these changes, put them into a concrete gender equity development plan that then can be followed, for example, in Ecom's case, from headquarters level, and help to provide support to those teams along the way. And then also look for companies like Guittard and others to actually support them along their gender equity journey. And that's the same with farmer organizations. We have a number of our farmer organization partners I see represented here as attendees. The Gender Equity Index works in farmer organizations the same way, and that the impacts then come from the organizations actually changing the way that they deliver services on the ground to really reach women farmers, and especially women who farm, who often don't consider themselves even to be farmers because that's always been the man in the house. So it's really a great opportunity to sort of shift how do we view the issue and to raise and elevate the conversation about the key role of women who farm and how do we support them to be successful.
Great, thank you. Well, I see we're running somewhat short on time, so I want to ask one more question of everyone. And Meseret, you actually touched on this in one of your answers about engaging men in domestic activities and joint household decision making and trying to reduce some of that time scarcity. But I was actually thinking about this as I looked through the participant list and across the screen here, and I see that there are not very many men involved in this conversation, although I see Miguel's face has popped up on the screen here. But there, for obvious reasons, has not garnered enough attention and engagement from men. And so my question to everyone is, how, as we think about the International Year of the Woman Farmer, how do we engage men more in the agricultural sector and financial institutions and international bodies and companies and supply chains in moving the needle on these issues? And Meseret gave one good example, but if others have any thoughts or ideas, I think it would be great to hear, because I think it is a critical piece of getting more champions, as Meseret said.
Maybe I can give it a go. Fundamentally, I don't think we will ever achieve gender equality if we don't engage men and young boys, especially in this journey. I think social norms play a crucial role, and during education ages of young people, to me, those years are really crazily important to really work on changing, how we perceive the realities and what's perceived to be a woman role and a man role. And I think until the moment also we don't work with not only men but also religion leaders, and together, make them realize how much more we could be achieving if we include women in important discussions, and if we we can invest in women. We can let them, for example, with small changes. I don't know who speaker was saying, if we change for example, the time of the meeting of an extension service, so that women can actually attend. These small changes are very important, and gradually we will achieve more gender equality, but we will never
Great.
achieve them without men. Over.
Thank you, Mariola. Great response. And everyone else, just rapid fire responses because we've only got a couple minutes left.
I can go ahead. I can use it as a shameless opportunity to plug Jen Lin, which is, so we're off the back of the work that we've done with Equal Origins. We're starting a gender equity learning and innovation network with the support of Swissco and Equal Origins, of course, to actually kind of build like an industry platform to accelerate the practical field level progress on gender equity. So the idea is that the network will convene the ecom origin teams, but also anybody else that would like to join, so that we can actually kind of dig into some of these issues. And I think, to your point, Alex, engaging men, how to make this not a conversation that's exclusionary to men, is a really important part of that conversation. And it would be a great place for us to tackle that question. So.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, can I come in?
Yep.
Yeah, so men are equal partners, and if we look at the current institutional systems, community level structures, so everything is male dominated, and communities and societies are patriarchal. So it needs, to create the aha moment in the social analysis and action in the CARES approach. What we created is to bring in women to reflect, men and women to reflecting what exists. For example, one of the simplest thing is for them to pile sort the time, the activities that is done every day, all over the week by men and by women, and then it was like a kind of sorting pile cards. So men saw it, and then some of them felt really very bad about it. So how often it happens, how many times in a week, and like how long in a day. So they've said, oh my God, I didn't know this much work was going to my wife. So I want to help her. So actually, some of them are naturalized ideologies. What happens does not happen because men are bad, but because how community is structured. So it's also the community leadership that has started to allow, actually to advocate for women's land rights.
Yeah.
And also institutionally, men are leaders. They have leadership responsibilities. They have also promoted gender affirmative actions, bringing more women into leadership, bringing more women into the technical
Meseret, I'm sorry,
sphere.
I've got to move to Amy. We're very short on time.
I'll just do one
thank
quick.
you so much. So
Yeah,
Amy,
no, just
one last word, and then.
Yeah, I was just going to say one quick add. These guys are sharing much more of sort of in-depth sort of origin opportunities. And Marcella actually a comment in the comments for the panel here made the comment that I was going to say, which is on the branding marketing side, making women farmers more visible, and actually integrating them into your communication, showing that they are present on the farms, and a really integral part of the system. I think that can help create indicators for people to start having them be part of the conversation. So I'll stop there because I know we're at time.
Perfect. I think thank you all very much. And Jessica and Kimberly, we're going to turn it over to you for a little bit of a closing session to get people inspired and take a little action to engage further. I think you're muted.
Thank you
Jessica?
all.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I'm really, I wasn't sure if Kimberly was going to speak. I'm really excited to share with you all a little bit about Kindred Sparks. We've talked a lot today about the significant momentum around gender equity that Equal Origins has created. And through conversations with Kimberly, she and I identified that there is a really big opportunity to increase awareness within the roasting and cafe spaces. And this is really in alignment with what Amy was sharing. And this is how Kindred Sparks was born. At its heart, it's really an invitation. It's an invitation to anyone within the coffee and cocoa supply chains. It's farmers, roasters, baristas, business leaders to connect through allyship and a commitment to increasing the conversation around gender equity within the consuming market. Our function is really to amplify the work of Equal Origins. We want to provide opportunities for cafes and roasters and coffee professionals to get involved, to talk about gender equity and create small but meaningful activations within their own communities. It could be hosting conversations in cafes or highlighting women in the supply chain or joining campaigns like our current Raise Your Cup campaign on social media. Our goal is to give people approachable ways to participate, celebrate progress, elevate voices, and strengthen the connections that really hold this industry together. If you're interested in joining, you can reach out directly to Equal Origins. We've got some supportive merchandise available. All proceeds, of course, support Equal Origins. And ultimately, we believe when we come together, producers, partners, and the coffee community at large, we can spark real change. And that's what we're here to inspire. So with that, I want to invite you to raise your cup in recognition of all women throughout the supply chain and to 2026, the International Year of the Woman Farmer.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you all very much. Thanks, Jessica. And
Absolutely.
thanks to our panelists. And if folks have questions or want to follow up on specific examples or even questions that didn't get answered or challenges they've got, feel free to reach out to Kimberly.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh no, the screen was still sharing, so I wasn't able to take the screenshot. Oh, you're still on mute.
Oh, shoot.